You're good.
Look at this.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
All right. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm kind of tired because I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to come here. The Iowa Law Enforcement Academy is 3.5 hours from here. So I drove in this morning from Des Moines just to look at your bright, shiny faces. See, there's another bright, shiny face walking in the door. What grade are you guys in? Can you start over here, please? I'm sorry? Okay. Ninth. I didn't hear what you said. Okay.
10.
Okay. What grade are you in? Okay. Just a little bit about me to begin with before I get into this presentation. I am much older than any of you are. I'm probably about as old as Mr. Carper, so we're both in our 30s. That sound good?
Sounds great.
I have been in public safety. I've had a career in public safety for the past, in January it'll be 25 years. I have been an EMT for a fire department. I have been nationally registered EMT for about 24 years. Lived in Indianapolis during that time, worked for a fire department on an ambulance, and we did about 5,000 911 calls a year. I have lived in Iowa for the past 10, almost 12 years, and 7 of those 12 years I was a dispatcher. I dispatched at a county level in Illinois, and then I dispatched for the Iowa State Patrol. Have any of you guys ever seen state troopers? Any of you guys, the guys in the brown uniforms with the, you know.
We got Jason Marlowe in here.
There you go. I dispatched in Cedar Falls, which is in Black Hawk County in northeast Iowa, for 6 years. And just to give you some perspective on how much of an area that is, we dispatched for 28 counties in northeastern Iowa. Troopers in every county, officers in every part of that part of the state. So, a lot of officers, a lot of work. It's pretty big responsibility. How many of you have any interest at some point in going into public safety or even thinking about it? Okay. Before I get started with this, who can tell me something about the public safety profession? Anything?
They all better be able to tell you at least a couple things.
Tell me anything you know about the public safety profession. Guys, just call anything.
It's constantly changing.
Constantly changing, yes. I know you know, you're trying to say something, go for it.
I said the public safety saves people.
Yes, they save people. Officers, EMS, please do not be afraid to speak up. You do not have wrong answers here. Frankly, I work with recruits and I teach recruits and dispatchers every day, so to get a different perspective is pretty helpful, yes.
It can be hard for your family life when you miss.
It's very difficult for the family life because public safety, guys, is a 24/7 operation. You don't go home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't go lie down. You don't take bike rides. You don't get to go to events. That wasn't an accusation. What I'm saying is, in this line of work, you work a lot. You work odd schedules. You miss family events. There's a lot of things that public safety takes from you. At the same time, it's one of the most rewarding professions that you can be part of. Tell me something else you know about public safety. How about you? You're kind of talkative this morning. Why don't you tell me something?
About what?
Tell me something you know about public safety.
There's multiple professions.
Okay, give me one.
Firefighting, policing, etc.
Okay? What am I talking about today?
Dispatch.
Very good. Look at that. You just gave me 3. Someone else give me, over here, someone else give me something about public safety that you know. Yes, ma'am. It is. It can be very dangerous. Do any of you, and I probably know the answer to this before I ask, do any of you watch the news? How many, well, do you said, yeah, so
I'll read
do
the news.
okay. Do you guys look at anything, how many of you in here have social media? I know I get like a majority rules on that. How many of you look at any news and related stuff on social media? Anybody? Okay. Do you ever see positive things about public safety, police officers, firefighters, EMS personnel? Okay. Do you see a lot of scary or negative things? Okay. So there's kind of a both and on that. This is often the image that the public has of dispatchers. Can I turn this overhead light up here? What's she doing?
Cell phone.
Okay.
Oh,
Does she look stressed out?
yeah.
Does she look relaxed?
Yes.
Okay.
Just really cool, man.
She's what? I'm sorry, she's what?
Never mind.
Okay. She looks like she's not really overwhelmed and just kind of sitting there doing her own thing, right? Often, the public has this impression of dispatchers. We sit at a desk, we've got a computer, we've got a keyboard, we've got a phone, and we just wait for a phone to ring. How many of you agree that this is how dispatching looks? You can raise your hand if you agree that this is how dispatching might look.
They should know better, we just had Kirchner from this on it yesterday.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure if they're just not listening or if they really don't agree. I don't know. This is the reality of dispatching. And the fact is, the average console, which is what we consider a desk area, has 5 or 6 screens, multiple phone lines, multiple keyboards at times, and all of that is being monitored by how many people? One person. So, if you look at this, person might come into work, grab a cup of coffee, chat with people for a few minutes, sit down at their desk, start their day. That's great. More power to you. If you look at this, on average, when a dispatcher comes into work, things are busy, the phones are ringing off the hook. Most of the time, they're the emergency lines. You've got multiple things going on. Accidents, fights, missing kids, car chases, officers on traffic stops with individuals that aren't cooperating. This is the kind of thing that we walk into when we go into dispatch. Now, I realize my saying that to you sounds like, well, gee, thanks, that's really encouraging. It's tough, it's exhausting, it's overwhelming. But the fact is, guys, this is also one of the best jobs you can ever have, because when you hear somebody thank you on the phone, when you talk to a child who is terrified on the phone, and you're able to make them feel better about what's going on, when you're able to give CPR instructions to a caller and a family member is saved because of that, it makes what we call chaos a lot easier to deal with. When I was in dispatch, anyone want to take a guess how many officers I had on the road at any given time? Just take a guess. 5, okay? Give me another guess. Did you say 3? Okay. 12? Another guess. How many officers do you think I had on the road at any given time? 13? Okay. Anybody else? Average number of officers during my shift that I had, and this was average, not even on a busy day, was anywhere between 25 and 35 officers on the road calling in a variety of things. It wasn't just troopers, it was a variety of different officers that worked for the Iowa Department of Public Safety. And how many of those did I have to keep track of? How many? You just said it. All of them. Every single one. Pay attention to their calls, pay attention to their information. What else did we have to do on top of that? Have to answer the phone. Have to type information. Have to look things up. There's a lot involved in that. Again, Tough job, but it's also very rewarding. I'm gonna give you guys a basic overview of what dispatchers learn in the initial training. And this is training that we provide at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. I coordinate the telecommunication or the dispatch program. Normally we do all of our training at the academy, but we're actually moving out around the state and going to different areas because we have so many new dispatchers all over the state, and it's easier to go to them than to always have them come to us. When we do training for dispatchers, the basic training is 1 full week. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday for 1 full week. We do nothing but dispatch related training. We talk about your role as a dispatcher, the kind of calls that you'll take, the kind of calls that you'll deal with, the officers and the public safety personnel you'll deal with, emergency situations, how to handle different callers. We talk about the Iowa NCIC system. Anybody know what the Iowa NCIC system is? Okay, would you like to know what the Iowa NCIC system is? It is actually a software system that allows dispatchers to look up driver's license, license plate, and criminal background information on individuals. I believe your sheet has NCIC written on that, correct? Would you like to know what NCIC stands for? Does anybody know what NCIC stands for? It stands for the National Crime Information Center. And when you run information through the National Crime Information Center, that stuff actually goes through a federal database that provides us information on crimes committed throughout the country. So if I run somebody's name here in the state of Iowa through the NCIC, that information actually goes through DC and a federal database and provides me all that information about any crimes they've committed in the country. Does that make sense to you guys? So my point is, your information's in a database, and your information's in a database, and your information, all your information is in a database. That's not to say that you guys have done anything, well, yes?
What the last C stand for?
I'm sorry?
What the last C stand for?
A center, National Crime Information Center. Another important aspect of the job, if you guys look at this, what might you have to do really well to be able to do this job? Say that again? Multitask. Absolutely, one of the most critical aspects. How many of you guys are good at multitasking? You good at it? Okay. You can do several things at once? Outstanding. How many of you are not good at multitasking? How many of you don't want to multitask? How many of you just want to focus on one thing at a time? Totally understand. What else might be important in a job like this when you have emergencies going on? Say that again. Say that one more time. Stay calm. That's one of the more critical, and I know you laugh at that, but that's actually one of the most critical aspects of a good dispatcher. Staying calm is really probably in the top 3 of being able to do this job well. Because if somebody calling you is upset and hysterical, which is expected, if you get upset, does that help the situation? No. Being calm, in control, knowing what you need to do, one of the most critical aspects. Very good. What's another thing you might need to do?
Be good at talking to people.
Be very good at talking to people. How many of you are good at talking to people? How many of you don't like to talk to anybody if you don't have to? Now that doesn't work well for me because I teach students on a daily basis. I teach recruits at the academy. How many of you like to selectively talk to people? You might be in the mood, you might not be in the mood, okay? You gotta be willing to talk to people. And not only that, but you've gotta treat them how? Respectfully. Nice is a good word, but the but the most important thing is be respectful. What else? Did you say something else here?
No.
Or did you? Okay, I was just asking, one of you said something. Respectful, you have to be, yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
I forgot the word.
Very good, very good. Be respectful, be professional. And even if you aren't confident in what you're doing or what you're saying, act as though you are. How many of you have ever been in a situation, as young as you are, where you're scared to death, but you don't let it show? Exactly. That's exactly what you need to do in this job. On a serious note, that's what you need to do in this job. Even if you're not certain about what you're telling somebody or what you're trying to explain to them, if you're confident in the way you sound, it makes a big difference. One of the most important aspects of this job as well, in addition to staying calm and being professional and multitasking, is officer safety. What do I mean by officer safety? Does anybody know? What do I mean?
By knowing where they're at.
Say that one more time a little louder.
By knowing where they're at.
Knowing where they are at all times. Why do I care where my officers are all the time?
So, like, if they need backup and stuff, they can go in and send.
Yes, if they need backup and if they need help, I know where to send it. Think of it this way, guys. If you have a friend, a family member that is lost, or God forbid if something has happened to them, does it scare you if you don't know what's going on? Are you worried if you don't know that they're okay? In public safety, I consider the men and women I work with, law enforcement, fire, EMS, all responders, my family. And my job as their dispatcher, not only my job, but my privilege as their dispatcher, is to make sure that they go home at the end of the day. How do I do that? Make sure they're safe. Make sure they tell me what they're doing. Make sure they tell me where they are. And when I run information for them, when I research information for them, if I know something about somebody they're working with that might be dangerous, do they need to know that? Why? So they know who they're dealing with and their safety is important. Officer safety is one of the most important aspects of this job. Do any of you have public safety members in your family? Police, fire, EMS? Okay. Which family member? What do they do?
My uncle, he works in the prison.
He works in the prison. That's a tough job. Very tough job. You?
My stepdad's a federal agent.
He's a federal agent?
Yeah, from the inspectors.
Okay, well that's interesting. Why do you laugh? That's actually very interesting.
It's not really, like, he just finds people. It's like, here you go, he owes $1 million now.
Hey, you know, we all have to do our part and you have family members.
Yeah, my dad and both brothers are part of the volunteer fire service.
Volunteer fire service. Anybody else have family members in public safety?
Well, it's in the Air Force.
In the Air Force, very good. Anybody else? Yes, he is a police officer? Where is he a police officer? Okay, good. All right. Does anybody want to try to give me a definition of a dispatcher? Just throw something out there. What do you think a dispatcher is? What do you think they do?
Oh, they're letting me down, that was one of the questions.
Well, I'll be more than happy to call on somebody. What do you think a dispatcher does?
Talks to the cops.
Talk to the cops, okay? What else do they do?
They search out the people, like you said, tell the cops what they are.
Okay? So they talk to, communicate with, and give information to police officers. Good. What else do dispatchers do? Yes, ma'am.
So they
answer the phone and have to do paperwork. Both is correct. What else do dispatchers do? What do dispatchers do? They what? Yes, we send people on calls when we get 911 calls, absolutely. What else do dispatchers do? Anything, just mention anything. They communicate very well with the police and fire. You guys all have accurate answers. You know this better than you realize. So it's easier to just say something than have me call on you. This is very much like teaching the recruits. They don't want to say anything until I call on them. All right. This is the actual dictionary definition of a dispatcher. An individual whose primary full-time or part-time job is receiving, processing, and transmitting public safety information received through an emergency services communication system. Some of you are yawning when I say that. I don't blame you. Bottom line, we do a heck of a lot in a short period of time through answering 911 calls, talking on the radio, and protecting the public and our officers. Does that sound like a better description? I don't like the dictionary anyway. You didn't hear that, but that's the official description. There's an unofficial description or definition of what dispatchers do. You guys had some pretty good answers, all accurate ones. For those that are in training for dispatch, they understand the following. An individual who in the course of several hours or even minutes, usually minutes, takes calls, filters information, and dispatches calls to fire, EMS, and law enforcement personnel, often with little or no accurate information, which is provided by individuals who have no idea what they are, what they're driving, what they're doing, or the circumstances about which they're calling. I knew you'd appreciate that, right?
Yeah,
I knew you would appreciate that. Let me ask you guys, have any of you ever called 911? Okay. When you called 911, did you know where you were?
Yeah.
Did you know the address of where you were? Okay, but you knew where you were, right? Okay. The reason I asked that question is, would you assume that when someone calls 911, they know where they are? Home, school, work, in their car, wherever. Would you think someone would know where they are? Okay. You know how many calls we get where people don't know where they are? Probably 1 out of every 2 calls. People have no idea where they are. How many of you have cell phones? Do not all of you actually have cell phones? Okay, I'm assuming everybody does. What do your cell phones have on them for location? GPS. Did you know that GPS can tell you where you are when you're in a car? Now, a couple of you are looking at me like, well, duh, ma'am, of course it can. Do you know how many people call us when they're in their car and they don't even know that they're in the state of Iowa? That's exactly the look I get from people all the time. How do they not know where they are? So you might read this, guys, and say, well, I mean, how would you not know? A lot of people don't. They don't know where they are. They don't know what kind of car they're driving. They don't know what their phone number is. They don't know their home address, but they're calling 911. What is my responsibility as a dispatcher? To find it out. Is that an easy task? No. A lot of times it's very difficult. Because why do people call 911 for the most part? To get help. And if they're trying to get help, are they calm? Are they controlled in what they say? They're often hysterical even, very upset, and they're panicked, and that's understandable. They're not going to know what's going on. All right. So how many of you would have any interest at some point, based on all the good information I've just given you, how many of you would ever consider a job in dispatching? Good, okay. Anybody know how many people there are living in the United States?
Affiliate.
35 billion people live in, that's a really impressive number, I like that. Actually, I could do my research, do you know how many people do live in the United States right now? I don't either. Let's just say a lot, okay? Let's go with that mathematical, let's go with it, 35 billion, I like that. That's scary, but it's gonna, so think about all the people even in your own community. Out of all the people you know, all the people that are potentially in this country, only 2% of the entire population in this country is actually able to handle doing the job of dispatching. What do I mean when I say that? You what?
They have all the skills.
They have what?
They have all the skills.
Okay, about 2% have all the skills. What else? Think about the 98% that can't do this job. Why can't they do it? Too stressful, yes. Why else? You guys mentioned this a little bit. So what?
Not calm, not sociable.
Not calm, not sociable. What else? One of you over here, yes, go ahead. Spend time with your family. That was one of the major reasons why more people do not go into this job. Because what does this job take you away from?
Everything.
It does. It does. It does affect everything in life. And you do have to have a work and home balance. And that's why this can be difficult. This is one of the most stressful populations, or stressful occupations in the United States. How many of you are familiar with air traffic controllers? They're the ones that direct airplanes in and out. That is actually one of the top 3 most stressful occupations in this country, air traffic controllers. Guess what's also in that top 3? Dispatching. I just lost my name tag. Maybe I should tattoo it on my forehead. What do you think? This job is changing all the time. Technology is changing. The job is changing. When things change, is it sometimes hard to keep up with it? Okay. Is it sometimes not really motivating to keep up with things when they're changing all the time? How many of you like change? How many of you don't like change? Kind of difficult, isn't it? And that makes a big difference. Does anyone know what I mean when I say burnout?
You can't do it anymore mentally.
Do what?
You're done. You can't do it mentally
Yeah,
anymore.
absolutely. Now, I just realized that my definition of burnout is probably different than their definition of burnout because I'm so much older than they are. Burnout, when it comes to this, guys, is how long you're able to do the job because of the stress and the demands on the job. The average burnout time or average length of time someone can be a dispatcher these days is less than 5 years. There's so much stress and demand put on the individuals, it's really tough to do this job. Now, if you have any interest in a job in public safety, let alone dispatching, I'm probably not the best person to encourage you to do this. Because have I really said a whole lot of positive things about this job? No, I sound like, and they aren't gonna know this either, I sound like a Debbie Downer. I sound, huh? You do know Debbie Downer, wonderful, okay. Bottom line is, you have to know the drawbacks and the disadvantages as much as you need to know the positive things about the job. Very quickly on this, I'm not gonna get into this, there are requirements through the laws in Iowa for training dispatchers. If you guys go to an agent, if you guys get hired on as a dispatcher within the first year of your employment, you would have to come through the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy and go through the basic training. Is that something you could probably do? Yeah. Gives you some of the basic fundamentals of the job, but all of these jobs have requirements for training that you have to participate in. Now, for you guys to read this, may not make a whole lot of sense, but this gives an idea of some of the things in the dispatch environment we deal with. We have to memorize a lot of things. The phonetic alphabet, all the voice tones of our officers. We have to memorize phone numbers. We have to memorize certain codes for how we dispatch calls. We have to memorize call types. We have to memorize different agencies that we have to contact. The training manual that I initially learned out of when I was in dispatch was 4 inches thick. And I had to, bless you, I had to memorize that training manual. So my point is, when you guys are sitting there, you're not just whistling a tune or looking on your phone. Trust me, you're not. You're constantly looking at information and studying things so that you know what you need to do next. How many of you are good at communication? Well, 3 of you raised your hands partially, so I'm gonna guess the rest of you. How many of you, okay, what's the number one way you guys communicate these days?
Social media.
Is this the number one way you guys communicate these days?
Uh-huh.
Okay. How often do you guys have a conversation with somebody?
All day for 7 hours.
So you talk to people for 7 hours every day at school?
7 hours.
But you do, you converse
Yeah.
with people. I can see that, okay? That's a compliment. Because a lot of people today they do what?
They text each other.
How many of you have conversations with family members? How many of you have conversations with your teachers?
It depends on which teacher. Yeah. If we're talking about
They
this
said it
in
depends on which teacher. I said that intentionally, guys, okay? How many of you have conversations in person with your friends or do everything on a phone? Okay. How many of you don't like to talk at all? How many of you would just prefer not to talk? I like this. I see one hand back there just kind of go like this and go back down on the desk. How many of you don't like to talk at all? Just would rather kind of stay quiet? All right. My point is, in any job in public safety, you've got to be willing to and you've got to be able to communicate. If you aren't willing or able to do that, it's going to be a tough job. It's going to be a tough career. Because communication, and not just a good communication, is really important. You all right over there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, make sure you weren't choking on something. All right. What's also important to keep in mind as a dispatcher is confidentiality. Who can tell me what confidentiality is? What's confidentiality?
Secret, something.
A secret? Okay. What else is confidentiality? Okay. I need you to speak up just a little bit louder.
Keeping people's information only in the dispatch.
Yes. How many of you have ever kept something confidential? It's basically the same as what you just said. Secret. Is confidentiality, if you have a good friend or family member that tells you something confidentially, is it important that you keep it that way? It is. It is important that you keep it that way. Guys, in this job, and I say this with the utmost seriousness, confidentiality becomes a legal matter if you don't. Anything you tell officers, responders, anybody, is confidential information that is shared only with them. That means you don't text a friend, you don't text a coworker, you don't text a family member, because you know what can happen if you do that? You can not only get fired, you know what else can happen? Did you just say it?
You can get arrested.
You can get arrested, bless you.
Thank you.
Yes. That's not to scare you, but there are some serious aspects of this job that you need to keep in mind as well. How much time do I have? 20 minutes? Okay. All right. Every good dispatcher has certain traits and abilities and skills that are part of the job. You said multitasking, one of the most important. You also said keeping calm, another important one. Give me another trait. Give me a trait of a good dispatcher, of a good person, of somebody who works hard. Give me a trait. No, give me.
I was gonna say, you just said it, but hardworking.
Hardworking, absolutely. Give me another one.
Friendly.
Do what? Friendly, absolutely, yes.
Gotta look fast.
Gotta work fast, absolutely. Absolutely. Give me another trait. Confident. Excellent. Give me another one. Honest. Absolutely. Give me another one. Way in the back. Yes, you. What? Loyal to the workplace. I like that. You never work at the academy? Another one.
If you don't do your work thoroughly.
Yes, be very thorough with your work. If you are sloppy with what you do in this job, it can cost you the job. It can also cost somebody out on the street their life. That's why this stuff is, and I don't say that as a joke, thoroughness is critical in doing this job well. We talked a little bit about being professional. You might have an opinion about somebody. You might not like a caller that you dealt with. You might not like somebody you talked to on the radio. Does it matter at the time? No. No. You have a job to do, and you have to be professional at all times. How many of you are self-motivated? Give me a definition of self-motivated.
Doing something.
What did you just say?
I said doing something with your, like, you, I don't know, yeah. Look it over here, so just kind of.
You're giving me the right answer, I just can't hear you.
What? How do you know it's right?
Because I could tell what you said was correct. Say it
Like,
again.
you don't need like other people to kind of push you to do it, you just gotta do it.
Yes, you exactly said that correct. You don't need to be pushed to do what needs to be done. You're self-motivated. That's very important in this job. If you have to be told, same thing as with home. How many of you, I don't know if I want to ask this question, but how many of you do, first of all, do they get homework?
I try to keep them out of them, but they get it from other classes.
Okay, how many of you get homework in classes? All right, how many of you do your homework? How many of you do your homework without being told to do your homework? Okay. How many of you don't do your homework even when you're told to do your homework? I believe that. Okay. Do any of you have chores at home? How many of you do your chores without being told? How many of you do them well without being told, meaning that you do a good job with them? That's what we call self-motivated. You do something without being asked and without having to be told to do it over and over again. And again, in this job, in public safety in general, if you're not self-motivated, no one else is going to motivate you. You've got to want to do it. You've got to be willing to do it. Because the most important thing, guys, who's on the other side of the radio that you need to take care of? Your officers, your fire, your EMS, they're counting on you. If you're not motivated to do the job, are they safe? No. Is the public safe? No. Very good. Does anybody know what empathy means?
Feeling bad.
Almost. Almost. Empathetic is, sympathy is feeling bad for somebody.
Yeah.
Empathy, does anybody know what empathy is? Yes, you both had the right answer. Being able to relate with their circumstances and their emotions. A good dispatcher is going to be empathetic to the callers and the people that they work with. Meaning, I can't say that I know exactly how you feel, but I've been in a similar situation and I can relate. Does that make sense the way I say that?
Yeah.
Empathy is critical because you can feel bad for a caller. We all can. But if you're a dispatcher, if you're anybody that can relate and kind of understand what they're going through, it makes it much better to be able to help them. And guys, callers, people actually understand that and they really appreciate that. How many of you are reliable? Show up at school on time, you get your homework done on time, you do your chores.
You're reliable, put your hand down.
Are you, how many of you are reliable? How many of you are Okay. In this job in public safety, do you think reliability is important? How important?
Very important.
It's actually one of the most important aspects of the job. Because think about this. Whether you're dispatching, whether you're an officer, whether you're fire, anybody, if you're not reliable, well, how good are you to your colleagues and your friends and your coworkers? You're not. And what happens if you're not reliable to them? What can happen to somebody?
You lose your trust.
Well, lose their trust, what else can happen?
I said they can die.
Someone can die. And I know you guys know that, but there's really a seriousness to that. If these things aren't taken seriously as far as the job is concerned, lives are lost. And sometimes the lives of the people that you work with are lost, and that's really difficult as well. I've worked with colleagues who've lost their lives in the line of duty, and that's one of the toughest aspects of this job. Do you guys ever feel like this?
Just said that's one thing.
Too much homework, too many chores, too many people that want you to do something, not enough time. Wait till you get a little bit older, it's really gonna be like that. This is actually what dispatching is like. You've gotta be able to prioritize and multitask and deal with a lot of things at once and do it with a smile on your face, even if you're not happy or in a good mood to do it. Couple other things I'm gonna show you real quick. There are words that can adequately describe a dispatcher. We are generally a very disciplined group of individuals. We have tasks, we have ways to do it, and we get things done. If we are not disciplined, lives are literally on the line. We have to be innovative. We have to think of ways to find out information. We have to think of ways to make sure that all of our public safety responders are taken care of. Anybody know what selfless means?
Not selfish.
No, selfless.
Yeah, I said you're not selfish.
Okay, you're not selfish. Give me a different, give me more than that.
You don't prioritize yourself.
Yes,
But
yeah, somebody else is a priority. Your officers, the public, other people. Anyone know what it means to persevere? You don't give up. There are times when working a call, when trying to find information, when getting things done is really, really difficult. But when you think about the officers, when you think about the fire, all the personnel you're working with, when you're thinking about the public, you don't want to give up because you have a responsibility to take care of them and the public. And sometimes you have to go the extra mile, and it's going to take a little bit longer to get that done. How many of you know what active listening is? I can look at 3 of you in this classroom right now that are actively listening to me. What do I mean by that?
So looking at you and like paying attention.
Yes, you are looking at me and paying attention. Do you know what the difference between hearing and listening is? What's hearing? Hearing is noise. So what I'm doing right now is just noise, right? Right? But if you're listening to me, what are you actually doing? You're understanding what I'm saying. If you are a good dispatcher, you're not just going to hear someone talk, you're going to listen and understand and be able to do something for them. Hearing is great. Listening is critical. How many of you guys listen to your teacher every day? He didn't tell me to ask you that, I'm asking you. Yeah, I can tell half, that's not true. Okay. How many of you are hardworking? Seriously, are you hardworking? Do you really make an effort? Good. How many of you think you're energetic? Maybe not in the morning, but otherwise? Okay. What does resourceful mean?
use what you have.
You're getting
What's
there.
the word? Use what you have to your advantage.
Wait, say that.
Use what you have to your advantage.
Actually, yes. Connecting with people, networking, using who you know and what you know to help somebody else. Good answer. All right. This is the kind of this is the most serious and probably the toughest part of this job. How many of you know what a line of duty death means? What is a line of duty death?
It's somebody that dies while performing their job.
Yes, somebody who dies while they are performing their job. I know not a lot of you might watch TV or pay attention to the news, but do any of you know of somebody, or have you seen on the news any time recently an officer who died while he was working? Are any of you aware of that? Okay. Where I'm going with this is one of the toughest and yet one of the greatest aspects of this job in dispatching is working with individuals who are selfless, who work hard, who are professional, and I don't say this lightly, who put everything on the line for the public. I was a dispatcher at State Radio for 6 years. Before I went to, or just shortly after I went to work at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy as an instructor, one of my sergeants with the Iowa State Patrol was killed in the line of duty. He was shot by somebody, and he died almost immediately. Bless you. Line of duty death, really any death for first responders, but a line of duty death, I really hope this isn't funny. I really hope this isn't funny. A line of duty death is one of the most serious things you're gonna deal with. Anybody in this profession, whether you're a police officer, fire, EMS, or dispatcher. What we as dispatchers do is called a final call for those in public safety. Does anyone know what I mean when I say a final call? What is that?
It means they're finally off duty.
It means what?
It means they're finally off duty.
They're finally off duty. Absolutely. Dispatchers will be specifically asked to give a final radio call for the officer, firefighter, or EMS responder that is going off duty for the last time. And what that means is their career, their tour of duty is done as a result of a line of duty death. The point I'm telling you in saying this is, as tough as this job is, as tough as doing something like this is, it's actually one of the greatest honors and opportunities in a career. Anybody know why I would say that? Why would you ever want to do something like this?
Because it makes you grateful for the time that you spent.
It makes you grateful for the time that you had and for their service.
It's an honorable death.
It's an honorable death. Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm gonna play this final call. I just want you to hear this because this is an emotional time for dispatch, for law enforcement, for the public safety community. I've had this call, and I teach this every time I do this dispatch class. This is one of 2 line of duty death calls that I have in this presentation, because in a period of 6 months, I lost 2 troopers in the line of duty. One who was shot to death, another who died from injuries sustained in a vehicle accident while he was responding to a serious call. Both of the officers leave behind families, children, colleagues, loved ones, a law enforcement community. It's very difficult. None of this stuff is easy. But I want you to hear this, because this is something that needs to be done during a line of duty death. Brian, can we go ahead and play this? Or do I have to log in again?
Yeah.
Okay. When I play this, guys, you're gonna hear the number 462. Anybody know what that means? 462 is the badge number for this officer. When they put him final, they start with his badge number because his badge number is being retired, okay? So please listen to this. And you might hear some emotion in it.
462. 462. 462, Sergeant Smith. There is no answer. 462. Iowa State Patrol, Sergeant Joseph Smith, by 1042 for the last time, on April 9th, 2021. Sergeant Smith, your brothers and sisters in law enforcement will forever watch over your family. May you rest in eternal peace.
How does that sound? It is? Okay. This is again one of the toughest aspects of the job, but it's also one of the most honorable to be able to do. That was his funeral a couple years ago. He died in April 2021. His daughter was graduating from high school 3 weeks after his death. His son was in college. He'd been with the Iowa State Patrol for 27 years. A single gunshot wound from a barricaded subject took his life. This is the tough part of the job. Because you're essentially losing a what? You're losing a member of your family, is what you're doing. Okay, is this not working now? Do I need to? It won't go to, there we go, okay. This is the second trooper that we lost in a period of 6 months. He actually died 2 years ago this month, October 20th, 2021. He was responding to a felony arrest warrant, which is one of the most dangerous warrants that is issued for somebody. He swerved to hit a deer. His car rolled. It burst into flames. He was actually airlifted to the hospital, and several days later, he died from his injuries. Just some perspective. Trooper Benda, the one here in the picture, has 4 daughters. His youngest daughter was 3 weeks old at his death. Family members, friends, members of law enforcement community. I worked with both Sergeant Smith and Trooper Benda for 6 years at State Radio. So, these are the individuals in this line of work that are part of my family. And I can tell you that when we lose them, we lose a part of ourselves. Because we never hear them on the radio again. And the law enforcement community has lost a very critical member. We may have hundreds of troopers in this work, in this line of work. Is anybody less important than anybody else? Absolutely not. Can you go ahead and play this one?
313, Sir Voss. There is no response from 313. Iowa State Patrol Trooper Ted Benda has got 1042 for the last time on October 20th, 2021. Trooper Benda, you served the citizens of Iowa with honor and respect. From this time forward, your brothers and sisters in law enforcement will forever watch over your family. May you rest in eternal peace.
Here's a little bit of perspective. I've heard these recordings countless times in the past 2 years because I teach this class a lot. There is never a time when I listen to these recordings that they don't affect me personally. Why? Anybody know? Yes, because I had a relationship with these officers and they were friends. And they're gone. Guys, the bottom line is this. It's a tough job no matter what you might want to do in public safety. Dispatching, fire, EMS, law enforcement, anything. But I will also tell you, it is one of the most rewarding jobs, careers you can possibly have. Yeah, you hear a lot of this, and I give you the reality of it. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, lady, you're nuts if you think I would ever want to do this. But if you consider a career like this, the friendships, the family, the community, the bonds, there's no way I can even describe it. It's one of the greatest things you can ever do, to serve the public, to serve other public safety members, do something that you love. I'm going on 25 years, wouldn't do anything else. So, with that, do you guys have any questions for me? Questions, comments, anything? Yes, ma'am.
How old do you need to be a dispatcher?
18 years old. You need to be 18 years old to be a dispatcher. And believe it or not that I want to encourage this, you don't actually need a high school degree, but you do, a diploma, but you do need a GED. Yes.
How long is the academy?
The dispatch class,
Yeah.
it's 40 hours. It's 1 week for the main training. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, hopefully, guys, you got something out of this morning. Hopefully, I was able to provide you some information. It certainly is not an intent to scare you off, but just to give you some realities of the job. I appreciate your attention. And before you guys head out, do you guys like free stuff?